Hi, is it okay if I call you Clinton?
Of course.
Okay, perfect. My name is Husoni Raymond, and I'm a 1L student here at Osgoode Hall Law School, and I'm a senior editor with the Canadian Law Review. And we're really happy to have you as a part of our Black History Month speaker series. Before I get into this quick and insightful and exciting interview, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that I am primarily located in Toronto or Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And this treaty is covered by Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaty. And just respecting that and understanding that, as Black people too, in this context of Black History Month, that our struggle for liberation is interconnected with Indigenous self-determination, and we should always strive to support Indigenous communities and their movements to revitalize their culture and their communities and their fight for self-determination. But I've been talking for all the interviews so far, so I guess I'll ask you the first question, which is just basically telling us a little bit about yourself and what you currently do as a lawyer.
That I can do. Thanks for having me. To begin, my name is Clinton Green. I'm an immigration lawyer. In terms of my practice, I help corporate and individual clients either immigrate to Canada or figure out, remaining in Canada, often dealing with like complex issues of criminal inadmissibility or medical inadmissibility, and employer compliance with respect to corporate clients. And so I handle a range of applications for immigration matters. In terms of my background, I'm Jamaican by birth, and grew up in Scarborough in a single parent household. And so my journey here it's been, I guess, atypical relative to a lot of students. But yeah, that's a bit of a summary in terms of what I do and a little bit about myself.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. I was going to ask earlier if you were Jamaican, but I'm actually Jamaican as well. I was born in Jamaica,
Where in Jamaica were you born?
in Kingston.
I was born in Mandeville.
Oh, nice. That's kind of like a tourist spot. So tell me more about your journey to law school, like why an interest in law? What sparked that interest, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, I think the interest was sparked at a very early age, and it was because of immigration law. I was separated from my mother at a very young age because it is a story that's very, I think, common in the Caribbean, where you might have your parent, it's mainly the mother, who will go abroad for a few years and do their best to to resettle and then apply to sponsor their children. And so my mom applied to sponsor my brothers and I. Have two elder brothers, and unfortunately at the time of the application, my eldest brother had aged out. And so at a very young age, I became aware of how immigration policies impact our families. And so we went through like various appeal processes and whatnot, had representation of varying quality. And I saw at a very early age the cost of everything and how it impacted my family, and how like good representation could have changed it. And because this is a core memory, and part of like my foundation as a youth. I grew up always being interested in immigration. Took a sociology program at York, and during that program I also came across certain law courses, especially where law intersects with race. And I also took certain immigration courses, which furthered my interest. I think, like a lot of us, I battled with some insecurity, wondering whether I could do this, and at a certain point started entertaining other careers. But ultimately, decided at the end of undergrad to at least attempt applying to law school. And this was only after a professor really sat me down and asked me what my what my intentions were. And I said, oh, I'm not sure. And he encouraged me to pursue law school. And seeing someone who I respected and who had, who I respected, see me in that regard, it motivated me to at least attempt the LSAT, and put in my application. And and even talking about the LSAT, I think it's important to mention how, someone might see your success or see who you are today and think that the path has been straightforward. But for I had failure. There was the LSAT I wrote it the first time. I was crippled by anxiety. I knew what I was doing, but the score was so low, it was completely out of left field because of the stress that I put on myself, thinking about whether this was the right choice, or the sacrifices I made by quitting my job to pursue an LSAT prep course would be worth it. And so, failing the LSAT the first time, I rewrote it quickly after, and the rest is history in terms of gaining acceptance to law schools and whatnot.
Wow, what an inspiring story. Thank you for sharing that. And you touched on so many interesting points. One, noting, as it is Black History Month, kind of the intersection between the law and race, and particularly immigration law. And a lot of the immigration laws in Canada and the immigration process often disadvantages Black people and people from predominantly Black countries, which is something maybe you could touch on. There's so many examples from the temporary foreign workers programs that we have, racist immigration policies from globally, where Black people have to prove their worth before they can travel anywhere in the global north. And just some of the examples that you've seen within your work to raise some awareness on that.
Yeah, definitely. You've already touched on quite a few of them, but when you think about, for instance, the temporary foreign workers program, where there's it's a large program, but there's a subset of the program where it targets agricultural workers, right? And so in Canada, that's considered no skilled labor. And federally, there's no option to transition to permanent residency. So you have individuals who have contributed significantly to Canada, who we rely on agricultural workers, so much so that agricultural workers remain a group, an exemption group, where they're exempted from testing for COVID and all these other things right now, where that's not the norm. But that speaks to how much we rely on these agricultural workers. Yet they face a lot of abuse. Oftentimes, don't want to speak generally, right? But they can face a lot of abuse. But more importantly for me, it's the idea that you contribute so significantly, and you pay taxes. Taxes are deducted, and there's no path forward unless there might be certain provincial programs they might be able to take advantage of, but for many of them they cannot, because they might not have the educational requirements, right? But they meet the requirements to come and work indefinitely.
Exactly.
And so there's no path forward, and then it's exploitative, or can be exploitative. So there's that. Jamaica is one of the participants in the seasonal agricultural workers program, and I see firsthand how members of my community uh, hope and wish for more. But
Yes.
all they can do is continue to participate. Definitely hoping to, continue to support their families there, but they're supporting Canada here, but there's no benefit to them.
Yeah.
The other issue you find in immigration, of course, is the idea that for the global south, many countries in the global south, you have to apply for a visa in order to travel to Canada. But that's not the issue of itself. It's the adjudication process and the biases that officers might lean on when making these decisions about someone's ties and likelihood to remain in Canada beyond their authorized stay, and the decisions you sometimes see. You can't help but note that this is rooted in racism, right?
Yes.
So there's that. Obviously, when criminality intersects with immigration, there's been lots of policies, some that are shameful, whereby someone could be like a permanent resident in Canada, who might commit a certain offense, but because they, don't have proper representation on the criminal side, or their criminal lawyer is not properly aware of the immigration consequences, they're suddenly at risk of being removed from a country they call their home. So I could go on at length about different examples, but suffice it to say, the system is, while they do their best, there are elements of it being broken. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. And I think you really hit the nail on the head with a lot of these examples. Particularly speaking to me is the idea that temporary foreign workers are good enough to come here and labor on our farms, but not good enough to stay here permanently. And obviously, the race issue plays into that.
Exactly.
And the fact that people from developing countries, predominantly racialized people, have to prove their worth before they can come to Canada. But people with a Canadian passport don't have to go through all of those hoops to travel. So we have to understand the global nature, not only how race and capitalism intersect to create enhanced barriers for low-income people and racialized people in developing countries and here in Canada. So with the last few minutes, another thing that's stood out to me was your journey to law school. And you mentioned how, you didn't really believe that, law school was for you, or that you could even be a lawyer. And that's very common among racialized youth. The way we see ourselves portrayed in the media, the stereotypes we hear about ourselves. And sometimes you can easily internalize those and see that you have no options, and the lack of representation, you don't see yourself in these spaces, so you feel excluded. But someone saw potential in you, and that encouragement kind of got you there. So I kind of want to hear more in these last few minutes about what that was like as a racialized person, and how you had to imagine yourself in this space, and what advice you'd give to like racialized youth who are interested in law but don't think that they have the potential to get there, or interested in any field that's a predominantly white space.
To be blunt, it felt good to be seen. I think as Black kids, Black youth coming up in our school systems, often we are overlooked, especially at the levels of, we talk about elementary and high school, terrible experiences. It wasn't until undergraduate where I bloomed as a student, because I wasn't under the white gaze as much. I was just an anonymous student. And so internalizing some of those, I guess, those experiences and the the clear bias and prejudice that that was in high school. It caused or impacted my confidence for a bit as I entered undergraduate, but it was only after seeing the results of my work that I started building confidence. But even still seeing the results and seeing the grades, it just still would not connect. And so it felt really good to be seen. And so my advice in terms of young people coming up looking at entering primarily or predominantly white spaces or entering law or any kind of looking to move forward, I think it's important to take advantage of the networks that are available to you, services that are available to you. That can be hard as a young person, but for me, like one thing I wish I had done earlier was therapy. It's to kind of unlearn and unpack some of the things that I had internalized and came to believe about myself. And so I think that, we can talk about, connecting with people and, doing our best in school, etc. But I think there's a lot of internal work that must be done. And unfortunately, it's the case for Black and Brown bodies. There's so much that we have, we deal with on a day-to-day, and so much that we've experienced, I imagine, from the that we must unpack, because unfortunately I think we're all in like we can say all, but I imagine a lot of us were in survival mode. It's very much compartmentalize and pack away these things, and it builds up and affects you. And I think that's work that should be done, so that you can, come to being more aware of what it is that you want and why you're pursuing the things that you're pursuing before even thinking about, a particular type of field. That might not be the answer you're expecting, but I think we need to talk more about mental health and the and how racism and the things we experience in the day-to-day affects our well-being and our perspectives on our worth and what it is that we want and why we want what we want.
Wow, thank you so much, Clinton, for sharing that. And that touches on a whole different topic about the importance of Black mental health and generational trauma, and the impacts that has on racialized people. But unfortunately, we don't have enough time to dig into these topics, because I'd love to hear your thoughts even around reparations and the form that can take in, providing access to mental health services for racialized people who have been victims of generational trauma from slavery. But we'll have to end it there, and I hope to have more opportunities to speak, but thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experiences with us today.
Thank you for having me.